I want you to picture someone for a second. You probably know the exact type of person I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sure we all have someone in mind.
Right. It's that person in your life, or maybe it's just someone you follow online, who literally never, ever misses a workout.
Yeah.
They don't break their diet. They just keep moving, just, grinding away with this terrifying consistency.
It's intimidating, honestly.
He really is, especially while the rest of us are quietly quitting our New Year's resolutions by like the third week of January.
Yeah.
But have you ever watched someone like that and just assumed they must possess some kind of superhuman willpower?
Oh, absolutely.
Like they're just fundamentally built with a different engine than the rest of us.
I mean, it is easily the most common assumption we make about high achievers.
Mm-hmm.
We see that flawless, unbroken consistency, and we just immediately categorize it as a genetic superpower.
Yeah.
We tell ourselves, I could never do that. I simply don't have that level of internal drive.
I have definitely told myself that exact thing countless times. But we are looking at a stack of sources today, specifically a pair of incredibly thorough video breakdowns that completely dismantle that entire idea.
And thank goodness for that.
Seriously. They outline a behavioral system called the Dead Silence Protocol. And the central thesis here is that those elite performers you're constantly comparing yourself to, they aren't actually trying harder than you are.
No, they're really not.
They're operating within a completely different mental framework.
Yeah, and the goal of this deep dive isn't to just hand you, like, another generic list of motivational quotes.
Please, no more quotes.
Right. We aren't going to sit here and tell you to believe in yourself or find your why. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
You're looking at the specific mechanics of how people completely shut off the excuse-making part of their brain, turning their goals into what the sources call an irreversible biological command.
An irreversible biological command. I find this framework really compelling because, well, I think we've all experienced that exhausting feeling of just trying to be good at something.
Oh, it's exhausting.
The idea of bypassing that internal struggle entirely is a huge paradigm shift. And the sources we're unpacking today, they blend two seemingly opposite worlds to explain how this works. You've got ancient Zen philosophy colliding directly with modern cutting-edge neuroscience.
It's a really unique intersection. It paints a picture of human behavior that is deeply spiritual, yet highly mechanistic at the same time.
Yeah.
But to understand how to build this unbreakable discipline, we first have to look at the biology of why our current version of discipline fails us so miserably.
Right. And the sources introduce this failure through a really relatable story. It's about a creative professional.
A very common scenario.
Yeah, very common. So this is someone who had massive goals, huge ambitions for their career, but they failed every single time their motivation ran out.
Mm-hmm.
They would wake up fired up, do great work for like 3 days, and then the minute they didn't actively feel like working,
completely stopped.
exactly, the work just vanished.
And we often view that feeling of, not wanting to work as a moral failing. We call ourselves lazy. We beat ourselves up.
Totally.
But the sources point out that this is actually the result of something called mental negotiation. Think about your own morning routine. Say your alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m. for a run. Right. Immediately before your eyes are even fully open, the bargaining begins in your head.
Oh, I know the bargaining.
You're thinking, maybe I'll just work out tonight instead. Or, I didn't sleep well. I should really prioritize recovery.
I'll do a double session tomorrow. That's my favorite lie.
Exactly. I'll make up for it.
I am a master negotiator at 5:30 in the morning. I'm telling you, I could negotiate global peace treaties in that state as long as it gets me 10 more minutes of sleep.
But here's the thing. That negotiation is the exact mechanism destroying your discipline.
Wow.
Every single time you debate with yourself, you are experiencing decision fatigue. And this isn't just like a vague psychological concept. There is a hard biological cost.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding the biology here feels really crucial to the whole protocol.
Yeah, it's the foundation.
Why does the brain burn so much energy just thinking about the task?
Well, it comes down to your prefrontal cortex. That's
Okay.
the part of your brain responsible for executive function.
Yeah.
So logic, planning, willpower.
Right.
But it is incredibly energy hungry. So when you're lying in bed debating whether to get up or sleep in, your prefrontal cortex is running these complex simulations. It's weighing the long-term benefits of exercise against the short-term comfort of a warm bed.
And it's doing all that before I've even had coffee.
Exactly. And all of that processing requires glucose. It physically burns energy. By the time you finally drag yourself out of bed after, say, 20 minutes of mental gymnastics, and you have biologically depleted the very energy reserves you needed to actually go on the run.
That makes so much sense. I mean, it's basically like sitting in your driveway, staring at the steering wheel and wasting half your car's fuel, just deciding when to put the car in gear.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there, revving the engine in park. And by the time you finally decide to hit the gas, the tank is already empty.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. You are exhausting your execution fuel on the decision process itself.
Man.
And this is where the ancient Zen perspective offers such a profound solution. The sources explore a philosophical concept called Fudoshin, which translates roughly to the immovable mind.
The immovable mind.
Yeah, and it's a state cultivated through a daily practice called Gyoji.
Gyoji, okay.
In Zen monasteries, Gyoji is the continuous, unbroken rhythm of practice. So when a monk sweeps the courtyard at dawn, they aren't waking up and negotiating with themselves about whether the courtyard really needs sweeping today.
Or if they feel motivated to sweep.
Right. They aren't wondering if they should just sweep it later. The action is simply a part of their existence. The internal debate is permanently muted.
Because the mind is immovable.
Exactly. And that is the inspiration behind the dead silent state.
So if this internal negotiation is actively draining our glucose and basically ruining our chances of success before we even start, the very first step of this protocol has to be figuring out how to shut that negotiation down entirely. How do we actually get to that quiet, immovable mind? Which I think leads us to the first major pillar of the dead silence protocol, right? The irreversible vow.
Yes, irreversible vow.
Yeah.
To understand this, we have to look at how we currently set our goals. The vast majority of us live in a world of what the sources call reversible goals.
Okay, reversible goals.
These are your private promises.
Yeah.
You tell yourself silently in your head, I'm going to stop eating processed sugar, or I'm going to write a novel this year.
But because it's a private promise, it is incredibly easy to walk back.
Right.
Like no one is watching. If I sneak a donut in my car on a Tuesday afternoon, there are no external consequences. The world doesn't end. I just reverse the goal and tell myself, oh, well, I'll start again on Monday.
And your brain knows that. Because the goal is reversible, the option to quit is always on the table, which means that mental negotiation we talked about, it never stops.
Right.
You're always deciding if today is the day you cheat.
Yeah.
But an irreversible goal operates on a fundamentally different level.
Yeah.
The sources cite some fascinating neuroscience research out of Harvard to explain this. They show why making a behavior public completely alters how your brain processes the task.
Yeah, this was the part of the deep dive that really caught my attention.
What's intense?
It is. The Harvard research looks at our evolutionary psychology. When you make a behavior public, when you tell your friends or post it online or sign a literal binding contract, you are fundamentally tricking your primitive brain. To the primitive parts of your mind, a public failure isn't just like an embarrassment. It is interpreted as a literal survival threat.
We have to remember the evolutionary context of our species here. For tens of thousands of years, humans survived in tight-knit tribes. If you lost your social status, if the tribe decided you were a liar or you were unreliable or just a failure, you were cast out.
And being cast out didn't just mean your feelings were hurt.
No, it meant you were going to freeze or starve to death in the wilderness alone.
So social rejection literally equaled death.
Exactly. And we like to think we've evolved past that sitting in our climate-controlled offices, but our amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, is still hardwired with that exact same fear.
Wow.
We're absolutely terrified of public failure. So the actionable step the protocol demands is to leverage that ancient fear. You make the thought of admitting failure to the tribe far more biologically painful than the physical effort required to just do the task.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
I hear what you're saying about removing the choice, but I'm struggling to see how living under the constant threat of public failure doesn't just, like, spike your cortisol levels.
That's a fair point.
Isn't chronic stress terrible for your brain? It sounds like we are essentially just bullying ourselves into being productive through pure, unadulterated anxiety. And honestly, that doesn't sound anything like the peace of a Zen monk.
It is a really valid concern. And if you were constantly dwelling on that fear, you would absolutely flood your system with cortisol, which leads straight to burnout.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is that the mechanism operates differently than you'd think. The anxiety you are describing only exists while you are still trying to decide what to do.
Meaning the stress comes from the possibility of backing out.
Yes. The goal isn't to live in fear of the tribe every single day. The goal is to use that primitive wiring to finalize the decision so completely that your brain stops looking for an exit.
Oh, I see.
Think of it like being on an airplane. You don't spend a 5-hour flight agonizing over whether you should open the cabin door and step outside, right?
Definitely not.
The door is sealed. The choice is gone. And because the choice is gone, your brain doesn't waste glucose debating it. When the escape hatch of your goal is publicly locked, the brain just accepts it. It says, well, I guess we're doing this.
Wow.
That finality is what creates the dead silence in the mind. You aren't bullying yourself. You are freeing yourself from the exhaustion of having a choice.
Okay, I see the distinction now. The finality brings the silence. If you know you absolutely cannot back out because the social cost is too high, the negotiation stops.
Exactly.
The glucose stops leaking. But knowing you can't back out introduces a completely new problem, doesn't it? Everyday life is relentless. If you're forcing yourself to do something every single day, how do you sustain this without eventually burning out?
Right, and this brings us to the next phase of the protocol, which addresses the actual execution. How do you perform the task day in and day out? The protocol demands two things that feel very counterintuitive to modern self-improvement.
Okay.
Establishing non-negotiable hours and following the one way.
Okay, let's start with the non-negotiable hours, because this ties directly back into stopping the glucose drain, right?
Yes.
The sources emphasize that it doesn't really matter if your chosen hour for, say, deep work or exercise is 5 a.m. or midnight. What matters is that it is fixed. It never moves.
Never.
Because when the time is locked in, your brain stops arguing with the clock.
Exactly. If you tell yourself, I'll work out sometime today, your prefrontal cortex has to evaluate every single hour of the day. Is 2:00 p.m. good? No, I have a meeting. What about 4:00? No, I'll be too tired then.
And you are just bleeding glucose.
A non-negotiable hour eliminates that entire calculation.
But the second part of this, the one way, is where my own habits usually fail, honestly.
How so?
Because the common misconception is that variety keeps things interesting, right? If I'm going to work out every day, I feel like I should do a heavy lift on Monday, maybe run a different trail on Tuesday, try a cycling class on Wednesday. I want to keep the brain guessing to stave off boredom.
It sounds incredibly logical. And the fitness industry certainly sells us on the idea of, muscle confusion and constantly varied routines.
Right.
But for the purpose of building unbreakable discipline, the sources argue the exact opposite. They state very clearly that variety is actually where consistency dies.
Why is variety so dangerous to consistency? I mean, shouldn't it help?
Because every single variable requires a decision. Think about it. Which book should I read today? Which exercise routine should I follow? Which coffee shop should I write at?
Oh, I see.
Every tiny choice creates a microscopic crack in your armor. And every decision is an opportunity for your prefrontal cortex to get fatigued, allowing those old lazy patterns to just leak back in.
So the solution they propose is the one way.
Yeah.
The protocol dictates that you perform the exact same sequence of actions in the exact same order for at least 66 days. And the biology behind why this works is fascinating.
It really is.
The sources point to this research from MIT to explain what is physically happening in your head when you strip away all that variety.
The MIT research on habit formation is foundational here. So, researchers studied mice running through these T-shaped mazes to find chocolate. And they monitored the brain activity of these mice throughout the entire process.
Okay.
The first few times a mouse ran the maze, its prefrontal cortex was completely lit up with activity. It was sniffing, looking around, actively deciding which way to turn. The brain was working incredibly hard, burning huge amounts of glucose.
Because the mouse was constantly making decisions.
Yes, but as the researchers had the mice repeat the exact same maze day after day, something incredible happened. Around the equivalent of that 66-day mark, the brain scans completely changed.
Wow.
When the mouse heard the click that opened the gate, the prefrontal cortex went almost completely dark. The brain activity shifted to a much deeper, older part of the brain called the basal ganglia.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The basal ganglia, that's the brain's habit center, right?
It is. The basal ganglia handles automatic behaviors, and it requires almost zero glucose to operate.
That is what?
It's the part of your brain that allows you to drive home from work, pull into your driveway, and suddenly realize you don't remember a single thing about the last 5 miles.
Oh, highway hypnosis, yes.
Exactly. You didn't consciously decide to brake at the red lights or use your turn signals. The basal ganglia just took over the program.
I love visualizing it this way. It's like, imagine walking through a really dense jungle.
Okay.
The first time you try to get from point A to point B, you have to use a machete. You are hacking through vines, you're checking your compass, you're sweating. It takes immense physical energy. And that's your prefrontal cortex burning glucose in the early days of a new habit.
Right.
But if you walk that exact same path, stepping on the exact same routes day after day, week after week, eventually you pack the dirt down. You create a smooth trail. You don't need the machete anymore.
You just walk?
Exactly. The basal ganglia is that paved dirt road.
That's a perfect analogy. And the key is that paved road only forms if you walk the exact same path. If you take a detour every Tuesday to keep things interesting, you are constantly hacking new paths through the jungle.
You never allow the dirt to get packed down.
Right. The one way forces the behavior into the basal ganglia. Once it is locked in there, you aren't deciding to do it anymore. You are just doing it.
Okay, so if we follow the protocol up to this point, we have the irreversible vow, which uses our evolutionary fear to lock the escape hatch and stop the mental negotiation.
Yes.
And we have the one way, the highly automated zero variety routine that builds that neural dirt road and hands the keys over to the basal ganglia.
We do.
In a controlled environment, this sounds foolproof, but I mean, we don't live in a controlled environment. Real life is incredibly messy.
It is very messy.
What happens when your kid gets sick? Or your flight gets delayed by 6 hours, or you pull a muscle? What happens when a massive boulder falls right in the middle of that beautifully paved dirt road?
This is the exact moment where the vast majority of people abandon their goals entirely. The all-or-nothing mindset kicks in.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, well, I missed my 5 a.m. workout because my flight was delayed. The perfect streak is broken, so I might as well just give up for the rest of the week.
And this brings us to the third and final step of the protocol, the pre-solution, which is entirely about how we plan for that chaos.
Yes. The sources reference extensive findings from psychologists at Yale who study what they call implementation intentions, or what the protocol simply calls pre-solutions.
Okay.
The core concept is that you must decide your actions before the chaos hits. You are preloading your decisions to remove decision fatigue during the very moments when you are weakest and most vulnerable to quitting.
It's essentially writing a formalized contract with your future self, the when X happens, I do Y contract. And the sources provide some really practical examples of what this looks like for elite performers. Like, if you are traveling for work and the hotel gym is closed, you don't sit on the edge of your bed at 6 a.m. exhausted, debating what alternative workout to do.
Because if you do that, your tired prefrontal cortex will lose the negotiation every single time, and you just go right back to sleep.
Right. Instead, the contract has already made the decision for you. The contract says, if the gym is closed, I do 50 push-ups and 50 squats in my hotel room. Period. There is no thought required.
And they apply the exact same logic to illness. The contract says, if I wake up legitimately sick, I will sit on the floor and do 1 minute of deep breathing meditation.
Just 1 minute.
Right. You obviously aren't doing your full, intense routine when you have a fever, but you are still engaging the habit loop. The goal of the pre-solution isn't to achieve absolute perfection in your performance every single day. The goal is ensuring there are zero gaps in the behavior.
So this fundamentally changes our definition of success.
Complete.
We have to move away from this toxic internet culture of like crushing it every single day and just embrace the idea of surviving the streak on the bad days.
Yeah.
Doing 50 push-ups or a 1-minute meditation doesn't feel like a massive victory. Honestly, it might feel a little pathetic in the moment.
It might, yeah.
But in the context of this protocol, that 1 minute is everything.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is everything, because a gap in the behavior acts as a reset button for the basal ganglia. The sources use a really powerful analogy to illustrate this. Think of a mighty, roaring river.
Okay.
During a severe, years-long drought, that river might slow down to a mere trickle. It might barely look like a river at all, just a tiny stream of water muddying the rocks.
Yeah.
But it never stops being a river until the water stops flowing entirely.
The water just has to keep moving, even if it's just a drop. As long as there is no gap, the river survives the drought, and when the rain returns, it will roar again.
Exactly. The pre-solution ensures the water never stops flowing. You never have to negotiate with chaos or illness or fatigue because you've already mapped out exactly how you will react to them while your prefrontal cortex was rested and rational.
Wow. So as we pull all of these biological and philosophical threads together, it becomes incredibly clear that the ultimate goal of the Dead Silence Protocol is much larger than just being a little more productive at work or hitting some fitness milestone.
Much larger.
It is a total identity shift. It's about killing that inconsistent version of yourself. You transform from someone who is always trying to be disciplined, someone who is always fighting that exhausting, glucose-draining internal battle, into someone who simply is unbreakable.
The struggle disappears because the option to quit no longer exists. The neural pathways are paved. The mind is immovable.
It is a phenomenal system. But, as we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final angle here that really stuck with me. Something for everyone to let simmer in the back of their mind after you stop listening today.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's the takeaway?
Well, we spent all this time exploring how to permanently lock down our habits, right? We've figured out how to use evolutionary fear to shut off the mental negotiation. We've learned how to hand the wheel over to the basal ganglia and let biology take over.
Right.
But if this protocol truly turns a goal into an irreversible biological command, what happens if we successfully lock in the wrong habit?
Oh, wow. That is a chilling thought.
Right, because the basal ganglia doesn't have a moral compass.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't care if the paved dirt road leads to a beautiful destination or straight off a cliff. It implies that before we ever make that public vow, before we ever leverage our primitive fears to flip the switch to dead silence, we need absolute terrifying certainty about what it is we are actually choosing to pursue.
Because once the train is off the brakes and the basal ganglia takes over, you are on autopilot.
Exactly. You better be absolutely sure you want to end up where that road goes.
It demands a massive amount of self-awareness. The protocol is effectively a psychological weapon, and you have to be very, very careful where you point it.
Could not have said it better. So for everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As you go about the rest of your day, take a hard look at your own daily routines. Where are you still negotiating with yourself? Where is your mental fuel leaking out while you sit parked in the driveway?
Good questions.
And most importantly, if you had the power to make one behavior completely automatic, are you certain you know which one you'd choose? We'll catch you on the next one.